As we still have it. Let's go.
What up? Thanks everybody once again for tuning in. This is the Activated Podcast. I'm your host, Ibu. And today I have a very, probably one of our most anticipated guests.
Stop it.
I'm dead serious. When, just to cut to the case, we got Sara in the building. Hello, Sara.
Hello.
Like I said, one of my most anticipated guests today, because I think when I started, not that I think, but when we did start, when I was thinking about doing a podcast a long time ago, me and you used to have conversations, and at the end of it, I was like, man, imagine if other people was privy to what we talked about. And you're also probably one of my deepest friend. Like, you don't just talk, you actually like think about what you're gonna say. And even this episode, you've been like hounding me for questions for like 6 months, and you're like, no, we taking this out. No, we leaving this in. No, I'm not. I'm not. You know what I mean? Which I really appreciate. And today I brought you on here just to kind of, I want to share with the world, or those that are listening and tuning in, kind of get your perspective on certain things, because I think having a diversity in terms of friends, really, I feel like it keeps you balanced. You know what I mean? I got my ratchet friends.
Your diversity quota?
Your what?
Your diversity quota?
I mean, you can look at it like that.
Check the box.
And you are my only white friend. Which is nothing wrong with that, right? So without further ado, introduce yourself to the people. Let them know a little bit. Don't make it generic, but like whatever, Sara. You know what I mean? Spit some bars if you got bars.
No, you're putting me on the spot. I told you have to ask me questions. I will answer.
Okay, how about this? So what do you do, Sara?
Currently, I'm teaching.
Okay. Why teaching? Why did you decide to become a teacher?
Well, initially, I didn't really give it a lot of thought when I was younger. I played basketball. I had hoop dreams. That's what I wanted to do. So I didn't really give a career that much thought up until probably my second year university, which is a little bit scary.
Yeah, hoop dreams?
I had hoop dreams.
I was going to say
serious hoop dreams. Are you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Say something. Go ahead, say something.
So, no, it's not that it's weird, but usually I've never come across a woman that said that she had hoop dreams.
I did. I thought that was going to be what I was going to do. And then when that didn't work out, I initially was going to go into physiotherapy. I wanted to stay in the sports realm. School didn't grab me the same way. That's a deeper conversation right there as well. We can get into that. But then I kind of fell into teaching. It attracted me because I felt like to be a good teacher, you had to be a lifetime learner. And I fell in love with learning.
Oh, that's deep.
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with learning. Never with school though, but with learning. I always loved learning. I was always really curious, and I like to know things. So I felt like that career path would allow me to be true to myself, and then also be able to help other people, and also change kids' experiences of school, because I hated school. So I wanted to go into teaching to create a different type of environment than what I had.
Okay, so I guess, with teaching as well, like, I guess and what grades do you teach?
I just finished teaching grade 4. The year before that, I taught grade 1 and 2. The year before that, I taught grade 7 and 8. But I'm actually went to Teachers College to teach high school.
Okay.
That's where my heart is.
It's high school kids.
It didn't work out. Yeah.
Maybe it's the preparation to get to that. Is there a difference? Like, does it matter what grade you, like, when you go to Teachers College or whatever, do they, like, put you in a certain specific box and you will become a teacher, you will become a high school teacher, or you will become...
Yeah, it depends. When you apply, you have to pick. You have to pick your stream. So you can do intermediate senior is what I did, so grade 7 to grade 12.
Okay.
Junior intermediate is grade 4 to grade 8.
Right.
I'm not sure. And then primary junior is kindergarten to grade 3-ish, I think.
Oh.
Something like that. So, but the biggest difference lies up until grade 8 or past grade 8 because it's 2 different hiring streams in the TDSB. So if you get hired by the elementary board, you're kind of stuck there. If you get hired by the secondary board, you're stuck there. So when I finished teachers college, obviously I did intermediate senior, but I ended up getting hired by the elementary board, so I kind of got streamlined into teaching those grades.
Okay, because I was gonna ask, like, are you able to like start as a high school teacher and then later on progress, or not progress, but come down and like teach first grade, or like, are you able to do that, or once you're like in one area of teaching, you're stuck there? Is that how it works?
Well, if you're a high school teacher, you can move. It's always easier to move down because when you're applying, the qualifications are a little bit different. So when I was applying for intermediate senior, I had to have, you have to have a 4-year honors bachelor's degree, and you have to have 2 teachable subjects. 2 teachable subjects meaning like you have to have enough credits in a specific subject stream in order to be able to teach those subjects.
Okay.
So I had social sciences and political science. But if you're going into the elementary board, if you're going to primary teaching, it doesn't really matter. And I don't think you need an honors if you're teaching below junior. I might be wrong on that,
okay.
but you're not streamlined to specific subject matter because you're teaching everything. You teach English, you teach
okay,
math, you teach art, you teach, depending on the school, you're teaching the core subjects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Now we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but I want to take it back just a little bit. I want you to maybe give us a little bit, like, I want to say like the neighborhoods you grew up in, right? Because I always joke with you. And I always say this thing, I was like, you are the white girl that should have been black. And that's just my personal POV, not to be, and I don't mean that anyway, but I just feel like,
I know you do.
you know what I mean? Because when I first met you, I didn't know that you were, like, what did I say? What did I say? Like, you look exotic or some.
An alien form, not from this planet.
Hey, listen, man.
I get that a lot though, so.
So that was an original. I thought, man, that shit was good. See, men always think whatever you say, it's like, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
Give us a little bit of. You grew up in Toronto. Mm-hmm. Where?
I like to say that I didn't grow up in Toronto. I always say when I talk about where I grew up.
So where did you grow up?
I refer to Serbia. I'm from Serbia, former Yugoslavia. I moved to Canada when I was 7.
Hold on. What does that mean, former? What's going on? It's a country that changed name, or what's happening?
It fell apart. It was bombarded by Western forces and fell apart.
Really?
That's a very subjective opinion. There's a lot of different opinions as to why Yugoslavia fell apart.
Okay, now I'm gonna sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I really don't know.
No, it's okay.
So currently, what country is it? Has it broken? Because I watch a documentary on that about it falling apart.
When?
Shout out to Anissa. She did put me on.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, because
The Weight of Chains?
Yes.
Okay. That's a good one.
Either the quality that I got was terrible, so it was hard to like.
Okay.
And I felt like it was very compact. Like they was talking about certain things that I was like, who's that? Oh, they were being specific.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like I had to like read a book prior to that, or like at least have a conversation with somebody that understands it, so they can kind of break it down. So I'm halfway through the first part or whatever. So once I finish watching that, I'll reach out to you so you could clarify some things.
Yeah.
But back to what I was saying, like describe to us your later part of growing up in Toronto, since you didn't grow up in Toronto. You don't want to claim T-Dot. But talk to us a little bit about that. What neighborhood?
In Toronto?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so we moved to Canada when I was almost pretty much 8 years old, and we moved around a lot. I was in the East for a year. I don't like to talk about that though. So we were at Victoria Park and Eglinton,
East and okay.
For a year, then from there we moved to the West and kind of stayed around the Eglinton West area.
How was the Victoria Park? Why don't you like talking about that? Like, what was?
I don't claim the East from the West.
Okay, I still don't know which part I am in Toronto. I've been here 10 years. I don't claim
Because you're from Brampton.
I sleep in Brampton. I like to say.
Okay. Brampton is just.
It's just that's west, of course,
it's
right?
It's not. It's just own thing.
Really?
It's Brampton.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up in
Eglinton West.
you lived east
For a year. For
a
like
year.
a school year, basically.
So do you feel any attachment to that? No.
To what?
To the east, like going
No.
Which is weird for me. When I first moved to Toronto, I stayed at Black Creek
Yeah.
for a year,
Yeah.
and I really feel like that was
But you were older than me. Like I was 8 years old at that time.
Because like some of my like my really close friends that I have now, outside of like family members and things like that, are guys from that area. And I lived there for a year, but these are like almost like kind of like a brotherhood kind of bond that I have with certain individual from that place. And I said, I only stay there. But like to your point too, is because I was only there for a year and I was older.
Yeah.
So you grew up Eglinton West.
Eglinton West, in the vicinity, a little bit south, a little bit north. Eglinton West, definite Eglinton area.
Okay, how was that?
It was cool.
Were you like the only black person around? I mean, were you the only white person like in that area? Like, was there a lot? I'm just.
Okay, so my upbringing in that area is a little bit. It's very diverse. Like it's very stratified, I would say.
Yeah.
Because if anybody knows that strip of Eglinton, like as soon as you cross over where the Allen sort of crosses Eglinton, you're in like a really, really rich area of town.
Okay. Right?
And then as soon as you cross over Eglinton, you're like in the middle of Jamaica, right? So it's like a really different, what's the word, demographic on that. Like it literally cuts, I actually read somewhere that it cuts the income, what's it called? The income.
Hey man. You're the teacher, you're supposed to, the income. Anyways, doesn't matter. There's basically a big split in demographic, right,
literally down where the Allen hits Eglinton, and so I went to school on the east side of it.
Okay.
And
is it east?
Lived
east or
on
west?
The west side.
Which one is the richer part? East.
The east side.
Okay.
Yeah. And my friends were always really diverse. Like I always had friends from everywhere.
From different, okay.
From different places. So, and my experience, I think later on in high school was interesting as well because I played basketball. Basketball was a big part of my life, and my basketball team at school we were all white. I think we had one black girl on the team, and then my real basketball team, because high school girls basketball is not really like a real thing, but like my rep team, I played in Finch, so I was usually the only white girl on that team. So like my experience was really stratified in that way, and I feel like that added, I don't know, it is a big part of why I am who I am today. I feel like having to bridge those worlds, having to understand both sides.
How the two words. Anything from that time, do you think that kind of propelled you or maybe instilled something in you that goes, maybe that leads me up to the teaching part in terms of looking at it like, oh man, I could have maybe having to mingle with two different worlds. Mm-hmm. Like looking at it like I could have a greatest impact as a teacher by, did that bring, if you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like my whole life experience has been, I just said this the other day, like a bridging of worlds. Like even from migrating from Serbia, and then like Serbians are very proud. There's definitely like a certain mentality that comes with being Serbian. And then also, but I had to bridge that with like my Canadian identity, and then bridge that with all the different cultures that I was meeting and all the people that were becoming my family, that were from different places. Mm-hmm. So I always felt like I had to bridge worlds together and do all of them justice, right? And I remember like one of my earliest memories in grade 3. I went to Rawlinson Public School at that time, and I remember my teacher, she was the only black teacher I ever had in elementary school, and I remember her teaching us about slavery, teaching us about the Atlantic slave trade. And I remember like, I don't remember what was being said exactly. I was in grade 3, I was a kid. But I remember being like, yeah, I remember being like really emotionally moved. Like being like, how could people do that? Like how did that happen?
How does
like I just remember being like, and it wasn't like a white and black thing to me in my head. It was like, how could people do that?
Like
to
a
people?
human to human.
Yeah,
thing, right?
and I remember like just feeling. I just remember feeling it, and I think that like we in teachers college we learned that teaching learning experiences are supposed to be emotional. They have to connect with the kid emotionally in order for them to be effective. And like I remember being emotionally moved, and I was always a really sensitive kid. Like I mean I am sensitive. Period. I'm sensitive to people's energies and emotions and thoughts. So like I could pick up on it, and it was picking up on that, and then trying to understand it, and then trying to live in an authentic way after I've sort of absorbed that information.
Yeah.
So I remember that was like one of my earliest memories that like we experience this physical world, especially in the West, very differently depending on what we embody. And then obviously my life moving forward again was bridging of all that understanding. And I remember again another memory I have when I was playing on that rep team where I was the only white girl. Like, and my memory of that team is like we were a real family. Like we were just, it was a dysfunctional family. There was a lot going on, but we were really close. We spent a lot of time together. I remember we went up to a tournament somewhere outside of Toronto, and I think if anybody outside of Toronto is listening or doesn't know Toronto is probably the most diverse city in Canada, and it's not like any other city in Canada. What you experience in Toronto, you wouldn't experience outside of Toronto.
I feel like that's also like to your point. It's like not only like in Canada, but like I've been to a lot of places.
Yeah, 100%.
Toronto really kind of. I feel like it kind of like bring your awareness down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because I went to Paris, and just to get in the mall, like a fellow black guy was like, "Nah, we can't let you in. You got a suitcase. You got like," which is weird. It's like I was just thinking, like, "Damn, would this really happen if I was in Toronto? Probably not."
Yeah,
you know,
I feel like in Toronto it's a lot more subtle. Like, well, we can get into that after. But so basically, we were traveling with the team to play on a tournament outside of Toronto, about an hour or two outside of Toronto, and we were playing an all-white team. And we were known, although I was the white girl on the team, we were known as the black team, right? And, like, you know, you pick up on that again. Yeah. I was just the token white girl. But we and I mean, we had, like, we definitely stood out as well. Like, there was a lot of characters on our team.
Did you guys win, though? Like, were you guys good? Okay. I mean... Because I just want to make sure that you guys was...
We did.
I'm just curious.
I learned during that time, I don't know. So basically we faced a lot of racism. And I was like, it was like such a, I don't know how to explain, like a heartbreaking feeling, I want to say, because it's like, but I think the positive part about it is it didn't break us apart, but at the same time, it taught me, while I can like be a witness to these things and be like, I can help in some form. It's like I will never experience what my teammates experienced. I'm there with them, but it was almost a privilege to go through that with them so closely, because it just taught me a lot about life and about like how different people experience this world. And like I remember this one moment in the locker room when our coach came in after parents were like spewing like racist insults onto the court, because I think we ended up winning. It was a really like tough game, and I remember it being really close. Yeah. And we were an aggressive team, like that's just how we played. And parents saying some ridiculous things, and our coach coming in to speak to us, and I remember like it was just, I don't know, it was a moment. I think for a lot of the girls too, was their first experience of such overt racism as well. And it was my first experience, I think, witnessing such overt racism, and our coach is talking to us about what that means in our lives and how to move forward, obviously differently, like, because we embody different things, right? But I remember like things like that I had learned, like definitely shaped who I am as a teacher, and definitely shaped who I am as a person, and what I try to do in this world, like, and what I try to be aware of as well.
As you were talking about it, I was just thinking, because you're the first, I don't know if you're the only one, maybe that I'm aware of, like the only Serbian that I know. Which I feel like it's not a household, like I don't meet a lot of them. I'm just curious, like how are Serbian looked at, like across Europe? Like how is the interaction between, like let's say, somebody from Paris, or I don't know, like how is that interaction? Because for example, in Africa, the interaction is probably a little bit different with Western countries, things like that. Like give us a little bit, like how that interaction is as a Serbian in Europe.
In Europe, well, we're Eastern European. We were not the colonial powers historically. We were actually the first. We were enslaved and colonized by Middle Eastern forces.
Really?
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's interesting. It's I think like that area, like former Yugoslavia. There's always been a lot of turmoil. We've almost never had, I don't know what the longest stretch of peace that we've had, but we've had like 3 wars. Like I think my great grandmother lived through 3 wars.
Shit.
Yeah, and even when I was growing up, the war broke out in 1990. When I was born in 1990, so that was like the last one that happened. It was called a civil war. I put that in quotations because again, it depends on your perspective on how you perceive it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of politics that happen in our world today. And then I remember in the 90s when this was happening, Serbians were painted as terrorists, as the villains. And the war that happened, I don't want to go too much into detail because to be honest, like growing up, when we moved to Canada, first of all, I was very young, and second of all, my dad especially made it a point to not talk about these things, because he knows how people get around politics, right? And he's like, this is not your war, this is not your battle, like you're in Canada, this is not your battle to fight. And he almost like wanted to shelter us from it, and because of the nature of the war, like the perspectives are so widely ranged on like what happened and whose fault it was and who, like, so basically but the Western media definitely painted Serbians as the villains, as the bad guys, right? Which isn't totally true. And I heard somebody say, when one of the documentaries I watched later on in life was, nobody wins this kind of a war. Like everybody lost. So many lives were lost. Such a beautiful country fell apart. Like nobody wins. Yeah. And who suffered more is not, that's almost steers away from the real question of like, why did this happen and how do we keep this from happening again? And it also like teaches you there's bad people on every side. There's good people on every side. It just depends on how you flip the story and which perspective you view it from, right? Yeah. And again, I think that falls back to the whole, my role in life has always been a bridging of trying to understand different perspectives.
What's going on?
Yeah.
And you were speaking about people being enslaved. How do you feel about, like, currently now when things like the Libya situation comes up and we're like, this is still happening? We're like 2017. Like, how crazy you think is that? Like, because from my point of view, like, it's even hard to even comment because I don't know. Like, I can't come up here and be like, yo, this is what people need to do. Which is weird. Like, we see these things happening, and we want to, obviously, everybody want to, I always encourage people to, like, the positivity start within yourself. Don't know if that, how big of an impact that does.
I think that's the biggest impact.
It's taking accountability. So, I mean, that's kind of like how I looked at it, like, how do we not have these things continuously happen in modern times and things like that is because, like, a lot of us, we've become selfish.
Yeah.
And money drives everything. So when I'm worried about how I'm gonna eat, or you know, there's a lack of money. Hey, you know what? If I could sell you in the tank, you know what I mean, in the terms of that, like, I would do it. And it's like the human greed has gotten us. It's making these things still.
Yeah.
Like we're still fighting for power. How do you feel? What was your reaction when you kind of seen the videos and things like that?
First of all, I can't watch that stuff. I can't like.
You can't watch the video.
I can't watch. If I do, I have to watch it in like very small stints. Like
small portions
at a time, especially visually. Like, I'm a very visual person, and that stuff like strikes me deep. I can read about it, I think, a little bit more to like us, because obviously I don't believe in being ignorant. Like, I don't think we should just shut that out just because I'm sensitive to it, so I'm not gonna listen to it. Like, that's
or it doesn't affect me. I don't care.
Yeah, but I think even that like whole emotional piece of like, it hurts me, so I can't learn that. It's like, well, how do you think that person is feeling? That's enslaved over there. Like, it's hurting them, you know? So I think like I still try to seek that type of information just through different sources, I guess, preferring to read it instead of like watch it.
Instead of watching the videos.
Yeah, but I think we have to be careful in today's world, like with what gets portrayed in the media and how it gets portrayed, and not knowing the full story. But in terms of like horrendous things like that still happening, I think like that's one piece of so many terrible things that are happening in this world. And that's not even, I think where we start is awareness. Like, we have to have the courage and the energy and the intention to learn as much as we can, and to like absorb as much as we can from the world around us, without it killing like our hope and our spirit. And I think like that's why I say courage to seek that information, because if we don't have courage, like, you have to have the courage to seek it so that you can maintain the hope that you need to sort of overcome it, right? I think a lot of people, a lot of people will shut themselves off from certain information because they don't want to disturb their peace, right? And that's why I say courage is really important, because you have to sort of build that strength within yourself to say, like, I can maintain my peace, I can maintain my inner peace, while also doing justice to my human community and understanding what it is that's going on in the rest of the world, and then learning what it is that I can do to help, right? And I think we all have a different role. I don't think all of our roles is to like be on TV or to be on social media talking about it or advocating for it. That's not everybody's role.
Social media warriors.
Yeah,
I'm gonna post about it for a week, and then next week, you know what?
And I
gotta
forget
get this
about
money.
it.
Yeah, I get this money.
And I always see people posting this type of stuff on social media, and I had a moment where I asked myself, like, why don't I post this stuff? Because I don't. Though I like, in terms of, is it part of my daily life? Like, to ask myself, why is it that I don't do that? And I think it's like, to me, social media, for me, I'm not saying for everybody, but for me, it's a really tough outlet to have positive conversations, because I think it's a snapshot. It's a snapshot of somebody's thoughts. It's a snapshot of what's happening. It's just really small.
I call it like it's almost like getting hits. Like you want to say the wittiest, the clever, or the funniest thing. In the 15 seconds you put it out there, and then it's like,
and these problems can't be resolved like that. Like, and these need to be conversations. And I think for me, social media is not the place to do it. Like, where I find the most meaning and the most purpose is having these types of conversations in my day-to-day life. And I literally like.
No, 100%. You're probably, like I said, you're probably the one of the deepest. When I say the deepest, like when we talk, like we talk, and I think and the dialogue is important because as we're talking, we're not trying to, like, I'm not trying to make a point to not almost to take away from your point or not make it valid. Like it's really to try to is to understand, like, okay, here's how I view it from my perspective. What do you think? Like, you know what I mean? And I like to just sit there and because I thought for the longest time, I thought what I was saying was the truth. Like, nah, like if I say this, that's what it is. But I realized that's not always true. That's my truth in the sense of maybe how I view things and I live through things. And sometimes with experience, I could be a little bit more firm in things that the message that I'm trying to put out there. Some things I don't understand, so I gotta sit back and be more of an absorbing information more so than like trying to drive a point.
Right. Listening has become something that we all need to do a better job of practicing. And what we were talking about earlier is like sometimes when we're listening to people, we think that we're listening, but we don't have the awareness we don't have the self-awareness at all times to see that sometimes we're listening through like a lens, through our emotional lens in that moment, and then when we regurgitate something to somebody, it's not actually what they said. We weren't really listening to them. We were filtering it through our own emotional state. And I think like that's a part of growing, is like being aware of like what it is that you're bringing to a situation. And the better we can learn to sort of like separate emotionally, the better we can like listen, and in listening learn, and then divulge that information so like it becomes our own. There was a quote I really love about truth, because I loved this topic for a long time. I was really into philosophy. Okay.
You also into quotes because you stay with the memes.
Okay, listen. The quote. First of all, most of them are my own quotes that I make.
Are they really?
Yes. But
sometimes I be reading shit, I be like, yo, I'm gonna need to call Sarah because that shit, I be confused. No, sometimes it is, and also depends on what time of the day I listen. Listen, anytime from 12 to 6 a.m. when I read something, I have a different understanding than if I would, you know.
Fake deep.
Yeah, of course.
Fake deep. But truth. Let me see if I can.
You said you got a quote.
Yeah, it's not really a quote. It's about truth. Like, and that whole idea of truth, I was really interested in for a long time. Like, because there was like this period of time where everybody was like, where it was all about like more objective reality. It's like, well, this could be right to you, but it's wrong to me. And I'm like, I'm a really principled person. So like to me that was like, well, who are you? Like if you don't stand for anything, then like who are you? And can we really say that like, oh, this is true for some people but not true for other people? And I think there's some things that are very subjective, but I think there is a bottom line truth, and that truth is that your personal truths have to allow other people to uphold their own personal truth. So if my truth does not allow you to have your own truth, then it's not a truth. Okay. And that's a universal, to me that's a universal truth. Like we have to, and whatever we hold, like whatever I try to make sure that whatever values I hold as like hard values, like this is for me good all the time or bad all the time, like hard values, I try to make sure that those things are based in truths that allow other people to have their own, right? So for example, like honesty, right? That's a hard principle. Is like across the line, we need to be honest, right? You
think it's why? Why is that?
Because if you're being dishonest to me, okay, that doesn't allow me to live my truth, because you're painting a picture that is a lie, right?
So the base, the core of the information is a lie. Is a lie. Okay.
And it doesn't allow the other person to live their truth. Like I think that's what we have to ask ourselves whenever we have like really strong core values, is like, does this core value allow the other to have their own core value? Because I believe like one of the things about us, one of the most important things about us coexisting and living on this planet together is like the freedom to choose, right? So and I laugh, or we were talking about this earlier too, about people like really letting petty things get in between friendships and in between relationships and in between like. And I think it's like when we get hung up on like dumb shit, like just like, and I like, as I've grown older, like some even bigger things to me are like, it's dumb shit at this point. It's like,
of course.
oh, this person didn't say hi to me. Like, dumb shit. Like, it's like, well, did you say hi to them? Like, what, like, why, like, little people being in their feelings about very, like, just dumb shit.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, even, like, I find it funny now, where people always, like, I'm quick to cut people off. And I used to think that was the most gangster shit to do. Hey, you piss me off, fuck you. I'm out. You know what I mean? Like,
thing to do.
but then I realized, like, hey, man, as I'm saying, I'm cutting you off, I'm still dealing with the emotion, like, yo, you really pissed me off. Like, I see you 3 years later, I'm still in my feeling. Now I realize that.
Are we gonna share our experience?
I mean, me. And this is the honest truth. We've been friends how many years now? 4, 5 years?
5 years.
5 years.
5, yeah.
We took about 3 years off out of that 5 years.
Okay, we took about 6 months.
No.
You took about 6 months off.
The first time?
Or it was a year. There was a one time.
No, it happened
There was a time
twice.
before that?
No, it happened twice.
Okay.
See, sometimes I'm very emotional in things that I feel, and it depends also on the person. So if we're in a friendship or like if I'm saying you're my friend, now to this day, like I hold that to the highest regard. And I remember me and you used to have these arguments where you're like, oh yeah, whatever, we're friends. And I was like, nah, but sometimes I feel like you don't treat me as your friend because you do some things. And I think in that regards, maybe we weren't understanding what that friendship was. So we would go, we'll go through our own little stuff and things. You would say something. I was like, she's saying this, but this is not the action that's following up. So, and I think the most gangster shit we ever did is, me and you will talk about things. So I realized that, you know what, there was a missing piece. Because I would see some things, and instead of like, hey, what's going on? Why did you say that? Or why did you do that? I'd be like, nah, fuck you, I'm out. Done. I'm not talking to you. And then we got this hostile energy between us. And we had to stop talking for a while. And I think, like I said, when I get to, sometimes also for me, what's important is I gotta remove myself from the situation and really think about it. And I think about things on a daily basis. And then I start to think, oh, okay, maybe that's not what she meant. And I think around your birthday, that was happening, and I felt like, damn, like I should be part of that. And obviously I've removed myself, so I put my ego to the side and I had reached out to you. And I think that same day we had went out and turned up like nothing happened, and then maybe the next day we talked. And I always tell my friends now, currently, like, yo, if you're my friend, B, I'm holding you to a certain level of regards. And shout out to one of my friends, I'm not gonna name him, but he had recently, he got engaged, right? And we have a group chat on WhatsApp, which we talk every day. And he is part of this group chat. Matter of fact, he created this damn group chat. Right?
He knows who he is.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Oh, he knows. And everybody listening to, I'm not going to put his name, but he knows. Shout out to him. Amazing person. I never had an older brother. So everybody I hang around with are older than me, and I hold him in that regard. So he was getting married. He got engaged or whatever, but he never told us. So I seen on somebody else's Snapchat the whole ceremony. So I was shocked because it looked like a wedding. So I'm like, I'm in my feelings like, how the fuck you get married? You're not telling us.
Yeah.
So it took a week or two, and usually I would just like that would be it for me. Like I'd be like, all right, cool, delete number, block. I would never even consider like giving that a second chance. But then I realized the power of really holding people accountable and telling them, listen, you're my friend. I expect better from you, and I also need you to have that same regards towards me. I don't want to be the guy be like, yo, I'm holding everybody else accountable and nobody could say nothing to me. That's stupid, right? So, and obviously his excuse was trash, right? It didn't make sense. And once we talked about it, we forgave each other, and I was like, yo, bro, let's not have this happen again. Like, I get it, cool, but like next time, come on, like look how I feel. Like I'm considering you to be my older brother, and you doing this, and you're not like. Imagine how that makes me feel. I have to see through somebody else's Snapchat that you're getting. Smaller issues became bigger issues. Became bigger issues. Like I'll text you, you won't text me back, and then you'll go post on Instagram.
This is the thing.
Hold on.
Let me speak on that.
Can I finish? Let me finish my point.
I am across the board the worst person when it comes to texting people back. Like the worst person when it comes to using this thing.
Yeah.
And it's not even one of those things where I'm like, oh, like where it's like, it's a thing or that I like to tell people about because I'm not proud of it. But I'm one of those people where like, first of all, I hate texting. I like talking on the phone. I like talking, as you know. I like getting into things, right? So like texting.
That's an old school shit. Being on the phone till like 6 a.m.
It's true. Yeah. I don't like texting unless I have to. Absolutely have to. Thankfully, like my friend Tiff, shout out to Tiffany. Tiffany's the same way. You know that she doesn't like to text. All my friends are like that. Yeah. So I'm bad with this. I'm bad with this, and I had told you that, but it wasn't okay. Which is cool. Like, and I had to accept that. It was one of those things where it's like, I have to say, this is who I am. You have to say, okay, that's who you are, but this is where my needs are. Right. Like, this is...
needs.
Yeah, needs. At the end of the day, every relationship, you have to present
I get it, yeah.
Your needs. Like, this is, at the end of the day, this is a deal breaker for me. Like, I'm not okay with this. You know, for me, not answering text messages is not a thing because I'll just call you or I just show up where you are. Like, but I think like we have to, at the end of the day, be honest with ourselves. Like, if this is something I really need from a person, I have to speak on that, right? And our friends have to meet us where we're at, or we have to find some kind of compromise, right? And I think I had told you the compromise was just call me. Like, if I'm not answering your text, call me. I'll pick up the phone.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but I don't remember, and that's the truth. But I think now, when you don't, whatever, I just kind of I'll move on with whatever. Like, I never took it as if I'm just like, you know what? Maybe she's busy. Okay, cool. Yeah. We'll pick that up at a later time. I want to switch gears a little bit. All right. Not the main reason I wanted to speak to you is because. Like through your teaching, like even like earlier on, like the struggle that you had, maybe like getting consistently to teach and things like that, and you also felt like your hands was tied as far as you knew the impact that you can have, you know, at the earlier stage, let's say a young woman or young man's life, and you almost felt like you weren't given that. Like, your hands was tied, like you couldn't really do what you wanted to do. Which,
the opportunity wasn't there.
You know what I mean? Hands on, as the teacher, you could see like, hey man, this could really help these kids' lives. To the point that, I don't know if it's out of frustration or whatever it was. Maybe you could clarify it. I don't think it is, but, and then you had gotten a job you had an opportunity to go to Dubai and teach overseas, or that's overseas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is I'm trying to think which way. No, I'm being funny.
We can't drive to Dubai. So.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Imagine if we could.
Maybe one day. Maybe in 20 years.
And I'm kind of mad because I'm supposed to come out there. But anyways, we'll get into that.
Maybe you will.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it. not after. I know, and I'll be honest with you. No, the main reason why I don't care for Dubai anymore is because it's become like whenever something becomes mainstream, I just get like I'm just like I don't want to do that. Like Dubai is where all the rich people used to go.
Yep.
Then the side chicks they got in the game. People with extra money.
Your favorites.
I can't afford no side chicks. And then it became like. You know, now it's like the nobody. I don't want to say no, but it's like it almost took away from what that experience was, to me at least. You know what I mean? Like, so hopefully maybe one day I'll change my mind and go. But to go back to what I was trying to say is, you've then got an opportunity to go teach out there. So I want to speak a little. I want you to give me a little bit of, like, how is it from your perspective, teaching in Toronto? And trying to have a positive impact on, what's the word for it? I almost say underage kids, not underage.
Under youth?
Not underprivileged. But anyways.
At risk.
At risk.
There's a lot of these buzzwords that none of them, I don't use any of them.
No?
No.
Teaching kids. We don't say that. I want you to give us a little bit of that. How'd you, like, talk to us a little bit about what I think is a frustration of wanting to do a job but not being allowed to do it to the fullest potential type of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I got into teaching specifically because, like I said, I wanted to work with kids that I felt like the system wasn't created for. The system wasn't trying to help them. If anything, again, saying these things on camera, but alright, the system is almost created to make sure that they don't succeed. It's truth. Like when you really break it down, when you really look at some of the things that happen, it's not an accident that this is how things work. And no matter how politically correct people want to sound and people want to spin things, when you really look at things, you see that it's created this way for a reason. It is this way for a reason. So I had a very specific sort of group of kids that I wanted to be working with. Kids like myself, I think, that didn't succeed or didn't do well in school, not because they're not intelligent, but because there's a whole bunch of other barriers preventing them from doing so, and a whole bunch of other reasons that they're not engaged. Like I just remember school just wasn't interesting to me. I wasn't good at doing something just because somebody told me to do it. And I honestly believe, like, a lot of the kids in our system right now that aren't succeeding, I think that's their gem. Like those are like, what would you want in a future leader other than somebody who really thinks for themselves and really does things from an authentic place versus because they're told to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think those are the kids that I see hope in. I see the future is in their hands, and like I almost like the system. Education works to if you just look at the fact that we go to school from 9 to 3 to get a job that's from 9 to 5, it's training you to fit a certain mold, right? It's training you
like
from
to
when
be
you come to
to
school,
be a worker,
to be an employee, to show up on time, to listen to instructions, to do as you're told, to not give much thought to what it is that you're doing, because traditionally school you didn't need to give much thought. You copied down notes, you regurgitated information, there was nothing of your own in it, and you're literally being trained to fit the system, right? And as soon as you didn't fit that, you couldn't succeed, and then you were one of the people. That's why sometimes we had some of the greatest minds not do well in school, because they were too much of their own, right? And they didn't fit into the mainstream sort of.
Into like it's almost like trying to put a circle into a square mold.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And I think so that's my perspective on teaching, and so I really wanted to work in the inner city in Toronto. Like that's where I find meaning and that purpose. Like I feel like I feel like the reason I do is also because I feel like those kids have so much to offer. Like, and a lot of the times, like, their lived experience is seen as like all those buzzwords, like underprivileged, like, but there's so much, they know so much, and there's so much value in their experience, even if at times it's negative or seen as negative. There's so much that they know that people who are teaching them don't know. And like, if we can see that as a positive thing, like that's when we can facilitate growth and have like integrate, right? Integrate them. I don't want to say integrate them. That's not the way I want to word it, because I want to say empower, because I don't want to say integrate, because I think the system is flawed. I don't think people should be integrated into the system. Yeah. So I want to say like empower those kids and those minds to create something of their own. You know, something that's true to them. So I think that's where I wanted to be initially, and I ended up getting a job with the TDSB supply teaching. and luckily falling into a few LTOs, which is long-term.
Okay, I was gonna say
teaching.
with LT.
Long-term contracts.
Okay.
So teaching grade 7, 8, and teaching grade 1 and 2 over the last 2 years, and then the issue with that is that you sort of just get thrown into a job. You're covering for somebody, like they might go on stress leave or mat leave or whatever, and you sort of like, today you don't have a job, tomorrow you do, and you're stepping into a classroom and somebody else has already set up the classroom. There's already a system in place. You also don't have a lot of communication with the teacher that left, so you don't know what the kids know. You're really just like thrown in there.
Yeah, you're
right?
like a facilitator for a day or two.
Well, that's
you mean the long term one?
No, the long term one, right? You're still thrown in there. You don't know what the kids have done, what they need to do moving forward, and you're also like being a new teacher. It's like you've also never done this before. Right. I've also never sat down and actually had to create a lesson plan or a unit plan to like fit to not obviously like outside of theory, because obviously we did it in teachers college. So it's a difficult position to be in, and because of that, I found that I was learning a lot, but it was like learning a lot under in a very stressful situation where I felt like, again, the type of person I am is like, I want to know as much as I possibly can and be as good as I possibly can at this, so I can do it justice, so I can do these kids justice. Yes. You know? And I felt like being in that position, it doesn't allow you to do that. Like I don't get to set up my own classroom from the beginning, right? I have to come into somebody else's space and work with what I have, which is fine. Again, you learn a lot, but I feel like you don't get to do as much as you can. So then moving to Dubai for me was really an opportunity to master my craft. You know, like I really wanted an opportunity to have my own classroom right from September, set everything up myself, plan all the units myself, have it be my own, and because the more you practice, the better you are at it, right? Teaching is a craft that you grow over time.
Yeah, okay.
And it evolves over time. So Dubai was a big part of the reason for moving over there, was having that opportunity, which sucks that, you know, that it's like you have to move away to be better, because you want to be better at your job. You know what I mean? It's like, why don't I have that opportunity here?
Especially, being I think the Toronto will offer that. Now, when you did get the opportunity, I remember I was super happy, and I know we've talked a lot about the frustration of not being what we feel like we need to be, in a sense. I've gone through that a lot, and before even like not doing what I love to do. And it's like waking up and going to do something, like, oh man. So now I understand when people when people hate their job, but we live in a society where sometimes you can't just get to choose initially what you really want to do, because you got bills. Things got to get paid. You got to put gas in the car and things like that. So it's almost like it's a tougher waking up every day to go do this one thing I hate, but I need to do it, or else I'm gonna be homeless. Yeah. Which is not what the system promotes. Come to, well, we're not in America, but in Toronto, come in. This is the greatest opportunity for you to do all these things. But it's not. Now, did you think that Dubai will give you the opportunity to finally freelance? And I know what I was trying to say is, when you heard about it, you was excited. I was excited for it because, like I said, this was like, yo, I kept telling you, man, you're talented. Just give it time, like it will connect. Maybe it was just drawing from my own experience, because it was like a grind for like 3-4 years. And I was like, oh, finally I get to do what I'm trained to do. And then when I seen it happen for you, I was super happy. But somewhere along the line, your tone kind of changed. I remember like us partying to the day or week before you leaving. And we're like, yo, we're coming to Dubai. We had everything set up.
Yes. Thanks again for you guys tuning into the Activated Podcast. As always, this is part 1 of the podcast series that I'm putting out. Part 2 will be out next week for the continued conversation that me and Sarah had, as we get into more details about what really took place when she was out there in Dubai. So if you really enjoyed it, make sure you tune in next week. Don't miss it. Part 2 will come out, as always, every Friday. Okay. For this week, I'll just say thanks for tuning in, and you've officially been partially activated. Thanks. Peace.